Japanese area throughout Japan, I should say, this weekend, including one that our own Susan Hirasuna attended. Now, Susan, of course, would normally be here with us in the studio, but she is in Japan live this afternoon to see how the people there are recovering, and she joins us live by phone from Ofunado, Japan. Susan.
Phil, the commemoration ceremony here in Ofunado has just gotten started. There is currently a choir on the stage singing. And we don't know as yet what will be included in this particular ceremony. But as you mentioned, there are ceremonies up and down the country, the coast, in particular the areas that were most affected by the tsunami. But even in Tokyo, where life has pretty much gone on as normal, there are people that will be gathering, including the Prime Minister, and to commemorate this anniversary. Now, if you go to some B-roll that I sent to you yesterday, this is actually a scene in Minami Sanriku, which is about 40 miles or so down the coast from where I am now. This building was the city-town center for Minami Sanriku. The story is that there was a woman by the name of Miki Endo who spent the time on the second floor of that building making loudspeaker announcements to the public that a tsunami was coming. And apparently she stayed to the very last minute and then made her way up to the top, to the roof of that building, which is it's like a 4-story building. But the tsunami, the wave, actually went over that building. There were a number of people on the roof, and only a few of them were able to survive. But she's been given a lot of credit for being so brave and courageous, and at a time when she had the information where she could have left for higher ground, she stayed so that she could warn others that the tsunami was coming. This particular building is in the middle of an area that's been totally cleared. At one time, of course, there were buildings all around because it was a part of the city center. And since the tsunami, it has become a bit of a shrine for those who want to pay respect to those who have died in the tsunami. And over the course of the day that we were there, we saw a steady stream of people who came to lay flowers. I also want to show you a photo. If you can take the photo of the hospital, this hospital is actually not very far away from the city town center and the city hall there. From far away, it looks like the hospital survived the tsunami, but when you take a closer shot, unbelievable, there was like a portico, a sort of an overhang on the second floor, and there is a boat. So a boat had come to rest right there on that little portico. And that wasn't the only scene that we saw like that. There was a 6-story building. On top of the building was a car. And the car looked like it was perfectly, like it was meant to be parked there. But in fact, the only reason it got there was thanks to that giant wave of seawater. So, Phil, it's quite remarkable to be in the devastation zone. I spent some time in Tokyo, then on to Sendai. These are fairly big cities, and you can spend a lot of time in areas where you don't get the sense that anything has ever happened. But then the farther up the coast you go, it's just one scene after another. And yes, there are so many areas that have been cleaned up, and there are mountains of rubble in places where, they've dumped all the debris. But then you will get to a part of town where, because there's a certain amount of indecision on how to go forward, there are buildings that have busted out windows and, blinds that are just sort of blowing through the windows, and it's really, really remarkable because it has indeed been a year since that tsunami wave came through. My hotel, by the way, here in Ofunado, is right on the coast. Across the street is a hotel, and it's still standing, but it clearly is not functional, and everything inside is just a bunch of rubble and debris, and it's really quite remarkable. Our taxi driver, when he brought us to the hotel, he made a joke when he dropped us off, and he said, by the way, if you feel the earthquake, you have 30 minutes. And then he laughed. So it probably wouldn't have meant much if I were in Tokyo, but the fact that we were right there on the coast in Ofunado, and so much of the area around this hotel was gone, it was a little something to go to bed with last night.
I've been reading that there's a lot of dissatisfaction, though, among the Japanese people about the slow pace of rebuilding. Are people talking about that there, or is this more of a time to remember the loss of life?
You know, I've gotten a couple of different sentiments. For some people, they don't want to be a part of the commemoration ceremonies because, frankly, they're living with the devastation every day. They just don't want to think about it any more than they already have to on a day-to-day basis. There is a lot of frustration for those, especially the older generation, that really just want to go home. There is no home to go back to, by the way, but they would really like to have the government rebuild or help them rebuild. That's essentially where they were before. The problem is that, you know, the government now knows that this area is too much in danger. Yes, this probably won't happen again for, you know, this is one of those what they call 100-year events. And those elderly people, they won't be around. So, you know, perhaps they don't care so much. But, in fact, the government and the prefectures have to make some decisions, and it has been slow going. By the way, there's also been sort of land shift. So the areas closer to the coast, they dropped. They were already at sea level. They dropped further, which makes them more at risk if there is ever another event where the seawater, you know, overtakes the sea walls, which, of course, is what happened with the tsunami.
All right, well, Susan, appreciate your reports. That video, we've seen the video that you sent back and those photos. The photo of the boat in particular was remarkable. We'll talk with you later tonight at 10 o'clock. Thanks very much.
All right. I look forward to it.
All right, meantime, scientists, of course, have been studying the Japanese